She was a shy virgin girl with a pure heart. But when the billionaire saw her, he whispered, "You're the one I've been waiting for." What happened next will melt your heart. Michael Carter stood at the tall glass window of his mansion, staring at the glowing city lights below. From the outside, his life looked perfect. At just 36, he was already one of the most powerful billionaires in Chicago. Everything he touched turned to gold: real estate, technology, investments. His name was a brand. But behind the tall walls of his mansion, behind the gold chandeliers and the marble floors, was a man deeply alone. His home was silent, not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy, painful kind. The kind that reminds you no one is coming, the kind that echoes when you speak, and no one replies. Michael hadn't always been this way. He once believed in love. He once dreamed of a family. But those dreams shattered long ago. His parents died when he was a teenager. He lived in shelters, ate in soup kitchens, worked odd jobs. People made fun of his dirty clothes. No one believed he would be anything. So he fought. Every dollar he earned, he protected. Every deal he made, he won. And when he finally built his company and bought the mansion he once dreamed of, he stood in its hallways and realized he had no one to celebrate with. Over the years, women came and went, all beautiful, all smiling, but none stayed when he refused to share his bank account. They wanted his money, not his heart. Michael began to change. He stopped answering calls. He stopped smiling. His heart grew hard like the marble beneath his feet. He started hiring people to do everything: cook, clean, arrange his days. But he never let anyone in. Then came the nightmares, the memories of sleeping on benches, the sound of his mother's last words. "Stay kind, Michael, even when the world is not." He would wake up sweating, breathing heavily. He'd sit at the edge of his cold bed, wondering why even billions couldn't buy peace. The only thing he trusted now was control. He controlled everything: his schedule, his money, his image. And yet, deep down, he couldn't control the aching loneliness in his soul. Every evening, he'd walk alone in his private garden. No one to hold his hand. No laughter, no warmth, just the sound of wind through the roses. One day, as he sat alone in his vast living room, sipping his usual black coffee, he noticed how the golden lights reflected off the ceiling, but did nothing to light up the emptiness in his chest. He whispered to himself, "Is this what I built everything for?" He didn't need another business deal. He didn't need another luxury car. He needed something deeper, something real, something he wasn't sure even existed anymore. He had stopped hoping. He had stopped waiting. Until she walked in, a girl with soft brown hair and nervous eyes, carrying a small bag, wearing worn-out sneakers, but with a heart that would unknowingly bring him back to life. She stepped into the mansion like a whisper of light into darkness. He didn't know her name yet, but something in his chest stirred for the first time in years. And he had no idea that this simple girl would soon teach the billionaire how to feel again. Jenny Harper lived in a small, quiet corner of the city. Her apartment was tiny, just one room with a mattress on the floor, a second-hand lamp, and a little window that barely let the light in. She didn't complain. She had never been the kind of girl who dreamed of riches. She just wanted peace, a place to belong. At 23, Jenny worked hard. She had 2 part-time jobs, mornings in a flower shop, afternoons cleaning homes for wealthy clients. Her shoes had holes. Her purse was old. But her smile, it was still soft and full of hope. Every day, she skipped meals to send money to her grandmother who lived out of town. Every night, she wrote in her diary about how someday she wished to fall in love. Not with a rich man, not with a handsome one, but with a kind one. Jenny didn't wear makeup. She didn't go to parties. She wasn't loud or flashy, but her heart was golden. People often looked past her. She was the kind of girl others barely noticed. But she noticed everything: the lonely man at the bus stop, the cashier hiding tears behind a fake smile, the withering flowers no one wanted. She took them home and gave them water. One rainy Monday, her phone rang. "Hello," she answered, breathless from walking home. "Is this Jenny Harper?" a calm male voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "I own a mansion near Oak Ridge Hill. I need someone trustworthy to clean. My usual staff isn't available. Someone recommended you." Jenny blinked. Her hands trembled. She had never cleaned a mansion before, and who had recommended her.
Why me?
She asked, confused.
Because you're honest. That's what I was told.
He didn't introduce himself. He just gave her the address and a time. The next morning, Jenny stood in front of the mansion. It looked like a castle out of a movie, wide, white, and shining under the sun. Tall gates, beautiful hedges. It felt like another world. She stepped forward, unsure if she should even knock. Suddenly, the front door opened. And there he was, Michael Carter. Tall, sharp, dressed in black. His eyes were cold but curious, and his presence filled the air like electricity. Jenny froze. She had seen men in suits before, but never one who looked like this. Not just handsome, but powerful. His voice broke the silence. "Are you Jenny?" His voice was deep, like it could command the world. But the way he said her name, gentle, almost careful, she nodded slowly, swallowing her fear. "Yes, sir." A long pause. Then he stepped aside and said, "Then come in. Don't be afraid." Jenny took a shaky step inside. Her eyes widened as she saw the gold frames, the polished floors, the huge staircase. It was the most beautiful house she'd ever seen. But more than the walls or the luxury, she felt something in the air. She looked up at him. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't warm, but his eyes watched her like she was different, like he was trying to understand her. Jenny set down her cleaning bag and quietly began her work. But her heart was racing. She could feel his gaze following her. Still, she stayed calm. She didn't ask questions, she didn't stare back. She cleaned the rooms one by one, careful with every corner. And slowly, something strange happened. Michael didn't leave. He didn't return to his office or take phone calls. He sat nearby, pretending to read, but clearly watching. And Jenny, though shy, felt something shift in the air. Not danger, not discomfort, but something curious. By the time she finished, 2 hours had passed in silence. She walked to the door to leave. "Jenny," he said suddenly. She turned. He looked at her, really looked. Like no one had in a long time. "You clean like someone who respects the space," he said quietly.
No one's ever said that to me,
she whispered. Another pause. "You'll come again tomorrow," he said. It wasn't a question, but Jenny didn't feel forced. She nodded. And as she stepped out of that mansion, her heart whispered something she hadn't heard in years. Something is about to change. And it did, because that day, the sweet girl with nothing to hide walked into the life of a man who had everything except love. Michael Carter wasn't a man who trusted easily. He had spent years building tall walls around his life, walls made of silence, routine, and solitude. But now, each day that Jenny entered his mansion, those walls began to crack. At first, he told himself she was just a cleaner. But when she left, her soft energy stayed behind. Her gentle humming echoed in the halls. Her scent lingered in the air, a blend of lavender and fresh laundry. And every evening, as Michael sat alone with his untouched dinner, he thought of her, the girl who never asked for anything, the girl who smiled at sunlight falling on flowers, the girl who was slowly waking up something in him he thought had died long ago. He started noticing the smallest things, how she would tuck a stray hair behind her ear when nervous, how she would pause before entering a room, as if asking permission from the silence, how she whispered kind words to dying roses, hoping they'd bloom again. Michael, the man who once ruled rooms with sharp words and hard eyes, now found himself waiting by the window, watching for her to arrive. He didn't understand it, but he didn't want to stop it either. So he started making excuses. "Jenny," he said one afternoon, standing in the garden, "these rose bushes are dying. Do you know anything about plants?" She knelt beside them, gently touching the dry leaves. "I used to help my grandma in her garden," she replied softly. "I don't know much, but I'll try." Michael stood nearby, pretending to scroll on his phone. But his eyes were glued to her, how she touched life like it was something precious. The next day, he said, "Would you like to have tea before you go?" Jenny blinked, surprised.
"Tea with you?"
"Yes," he said, with the first true smile he'd given in years. "If you're not in a hurry." Jenny sat across from him at the long dining table, her hands wrapped around a warm teacup. They didn't speak much, but silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt safe. Day after day, it became more than just cleaning. Michael would walk with her in the garden. He asked about her favorite color, her favorite flower, her dreams. She was shy at first, careful, but his quiet kindness made her feel seen, maybe for the first time in her life. "I want to open a small flower shop one day," she said one evening, brushing dust off a windowsill. He turned to her, curious. "Why flowers?" She smiled. "Because they don't speak, but they still say so much." Michael didn't say anything, but in that moment he realized she wasn't just sweet. She was deep. Days turned into weeks. Then, one soft evening, as the sky blushed with orange and pink, they sat by the garden fountain. Jenny wore a pale dress. Her cheeks glowed in the sunset. Michael watched her, unable to look away. "I know I'm just a cleaner," she said quietly, "but I've never felt more peaceful than I do here." "You're not just anything," he replied, his voice low. "You're the reason this house feels alive again." She looked down, her fingers fidgeting. There was a long pause, and then she said something that shook him. "I've never dated anyone seriously. I've never even been kissed." Michael froze. She continued, voice trembling. "Not because I didn't want to. I was waiting for someone who didn't look at me like I was nothing. Someone who saw my heart." He stared at her in awe. How could someone so innocent, so genuine, still exist in this broken world? Most women he met wanted things from him. Fame, fortune, spotlight. Jenny only wanted to be understood. He moved closer, gently, like not to frighten a dove. "You're not just a cleaner here anymore," he said softly. "I wait for you. I look for you. My world feels quieter when you're not around." Jenny looked up, eyes wide and full of emotion. "Michael," she whispered, "I don't know if I'm ready for more." He nodded. "I know, and I'm not here to rush you." She swallowed. "I'm scared." He touched her hand gently. "Then I'll wait, for as long as you need." And in that moment, something powerful grew between them. Not just attraction, but trust. Real, honest trust. The kind that takes root and doesn't let go. The days had grown longer, softer, warmer, but not because of the weather. Because of Jenny. Michael found himself looking forward to every moment with her. Even when she wasn't around, her presence seemed to live in the rooms. Her smile floated in the air like music. Her laughter replayed in his mind like a favorite song. She still cleaned the house. But now she cleaned with music playing, and Michael often sat nearby, pretending to read while stealing glances at her. They would share little stories, long walks in the garden, and sometimes just comfortable silence. The mansion that once felt like a museum now felt like a home, because Jenny filled the space not with riches, but with warmth. One Thursday evening, Michael made a quiet decision. He walked out to the garden, picked the freshest rose, and left it beside a small handwritten card on the kitchen counter. It read, "Dinner, just us, in the garden. 7 p.m., come as you are. Michael." Jenny found the card the next morning. Her hands trembled slightly. No man had ever asked her to dinner. Not like this, not with such gentle care. She wore her simplest blue dress. It wasn't fancy, but it made her feel pretty. She tied her hair in a soft bun and walked toward the garden with shaky steps and a hopeful heart. When she arrived, she stopped in her tracks. The garden was glowing. Golden string lights hung in the trees. The table was small and round, with candles flickering in the gentle breeze. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Michael stood there, dressed in a white shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie. Just him, real, calm, waiting. When he saw her, he smiled, like really smiled, and something deep inside her fluttered. "You look beautiful," he said, walking over and pulling out a chair for her. Jenny's cheeks turned pink. "Thank you. This is magical." They ate slowly, laughing quietly about little things. Jenny told him how she used to pretend flower petals were dresses for fairies. Michael told her how he once built a treehouse that collapsed because he couldn't afford nails. Their laughter filled the garden like spring rain, light and pure. As the evening deepened, the stars appeared above them like tiny lanterns in the sky. Michael stood and reached out his hand. "Dance with me." Jenny hesitated, then nodded, placing her hand in his. He pulled her close, their steps slow, their hearts faster. And in that quiet moment, his hand gently cupped her cheek. He leaned closer, eyes locked on hers. Her breath caught in her throat. Their lips were just inches apart when she whispered, soft, scared, but honest.
Go slow. I'm still a virgin.
Michael froze, not in shock, but in awe. Her eyes weren't just scared. They were full of trust. And that trust was sacred. He stepped back slightly, still holding her hand. I'm not here to take anything from you, he said softly. I'm here to protect you, to cherish you. You're not just beautiful, you're brave. Jenny felt something shift, something deep and warm. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever seen her, not just as a body, but as a soul. Michael didn't try to kiss her again. He just pulled her gently into his arms and held her. Not for pleasure, not for passion, but for peace. And then he cried, softly, quietly, like a man who had held it all in for too long. Jenny whispered,
Why are you crying?
He didn't hide his tears. Because, he said with a trembling voice, no one ever gave me this kind of honesty, not even once. You trust me, and I don't want to break that. I've been surrounded by people who lied, used, wanted. But you, Jenny, you're real. She laid her head on his chest. His heartbeat was strong, fast, and raw. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't, he promised. I'll wait as long as it takes. That night, they didn't kiss again. They didn't go further. But something unshakable was built, something stronger than desire. Respect, love, a bond that didn't need to rush to be real. And as Jenny left the garden later that night, she looked up at the stars and smiled. For the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to be truly safe. And Michael, still sitting in the candlelight, touched the place where her hand had rested on his heart, and whispered, She's the one. Jenny's neighbor, a bitter, jealous man who once tried to woo her, saw her stepping out of a sleek luxury car one morning. His heart burned with resentment, his pride wounded. He began spreading lies. She's a gold digger, he sneered to anyone who'd listen. That billionaire's blinded. He doesn't know what she really is. The poison spread fast. Whispers reached Michael's staff. Some even resigned, shaking their heads in disapproval. No billionaire falls for a poor girl unless she's playing him, they muttered. When Michael heard the rumors, fury burned in his chest. Without hesitation, he went to Jenny. His voice was tight. Tell me the truth. Are you here for me or my money? Jenny didn't cry. She didn't explain. Instead, she handed him a small white envelope. My rent money, she said softly. Still untouched. I never used your gifts. I never took your money. I stayed because of you. Her voice trembled. But if I've become a problem, I'll walk away. She turned to leave. Michael's breath caught. No. He stepped forward and gently grabbed her hand. No, he said, his voice full of fire and certainty. We are not going to let bitter people write our story. Then something happened no one expected. Michael walked out the front doors of his golden mansion, hand in hand with Jenny. Dozens of staff, neighbors, and reporters watched as he stood tall beside her. She's the only person who ever saw me, he said. If you can't accept her, then you never accepted me. 1 year later, the same garden bloomed again, soft petals, warm lights, and the sound of quiet laughter. The stars twinkled above as if they remembered what happened here once before. Michael stood in the very spot where everything had changed. Nervous, hopeful, and deeply in love, Jenny walked into the garden in a white dress. Not a wedding gown, but something simple, soft, and beautiful. She didn't need diamonds or gold. Her heart already held everything she ever wanted. Michael dropped to one knee. A single tear slid down his cheek as he opened the small velvet box. Jenny, he said, voice shaking, you didn't just walk into my life. You gave me a new one. He paused, taking a breath. Will you marry me? Jenny froze. Tears rushed to her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment, but living it felt like a miracle. She nodded, then whispered, Yes, yes, I will. He stood, wrapped her in his arms, and in that garden filled with moonlight, they kissed like the world around them had finally gone quiet. Their wedding was held 3 months later. No media, No reporters or flashing cameras. Just peace. Just love. The ceremony was held on a hilltop near the sea. Waves crashed in the distance like music. Jenny wore her grandmother's lace. Michael wore a simple black suit and the softest smile anyone had ever seen. Only 20 guests attended, old friends. Some girls from the shelter Jenny had started. A young boy Michael had sponsored, now in college, stood beside him as his best man. They made vows that didn't need fancy words.
I promise to be your safe place,
Jenny said.
and I promise to never forget what it means to be broken and to heal together.
Michael took her hands and said,
I once believed love wasn't real, but you made me believe again.
They kissed as the wind blew gently, and laughter filled the air like confetti. After the wedding, Jenny returned to her work. She opened homes for young girls who had nowhere to go. She gave them books, warm meals, classes, and love. Michael funded new schools in forgotten neighborhoods. He hired people who had never been given a chance. Men with pasts, women who had been silenced. He saw value where others had only seen statistics. They built a world rooted in truth. Not status, not fame, just compassion and action. Years passed, but they never changed. Every evening they had dinner together. No phones, no meetings. Just music, laughter, and sometimes soft tears. They took walks through that same garden every month. And on the anniversary of his proposal, they returned to the exact spot, hand in hand. He would always ask her, "Would you still say yes?" And Jenny would laugh softly and say, "1,000 times over?" At night, after the world was asleep, Jenny would sometimes stare at him and whisper, "You changed me, but in the kindest way." And Michael would pull her close, kiss her forehead, and reply every time with a soft smile, "You saved me from a cold world and gave me a reason to believe in love again." And together they built not just a marriage, but a legacy, one full of grace, healing, and hope. A love story that helped change the world.